BCA-101 Introduction to Computers and Information Systems. We have here software we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail. And we're going to do some definitions here, and then we'll do some demo items later on, actually looking at some features. So this podcast is going to be system software. I'm going to go over a few general items concerning system software, and there's plenty of information via a number of different websites concerning this. So let's start off. There's three or four different things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the operating system, a little bit about utilities we can use, device drivers. There are software that allows multiple items to be used with a computer. And then we'll briefly mention antivirus software to monitor items, like when you download things or use a flash drive or, put a DVD in or something in your computer to check to see if there's any known viruses coming in. You can't stop all viruses possibly, but at least to check that. Alright, so operating systems. There's no clear separation of the items I'm going to talk about here, but I'm going to take some items and some features, functions, and categories of operating systems and try to define them, splitting these up. First of all, what does an operating system do? What are the functions of an operating system? What it does is it manages system resources. Manage system resources. Manages system resources. And those resources be the processor, memory, disk space, input, output, and a lot more items than you'd probably even care to know. So, a little bit earlier we talked about the whole idea of items being in memory, processor. We have to send items from memory to processor. We have to have file management. We've got to manage the files that are stored out on the hard drive, and then manage bringing that information into the computer. We've got to manage the scanners, the audible input, all that different type of input, all the different type of output. How do we get it to the device? How does it get to the printer? And so forth. So the operating system, these are all resources, things we want to use. We want to use the hard drive. We want to, even though you don't realize it, we want to put things in memory so the processor can process them. So all this work of managing, moving everything around, keeping track of what's in memory and so forth, how the instructions get the processor, what's going to be offloaded to maybe a video card to send out to the monitor. An operating system has to manage all those resources. Now, some of the features of an operating system. Well, I'm going to mention features in this realm. We're going to talk about graphical user interface. And some people still use this term, GUI, but there are all different ways that could be a feature. I mean, how do you communicate with the operating system? You don't see it necessarily, but or think about it maybe, but if you have a smartphone you have a smartphone and you click on an app, that's your graphical user interface. You can get the app started by clicking on it. Sliding. Which fingers move what? Okay, so you might think, if you've ever used then the transition from smartphones to maybe tablets, some of that's similar but some's different, and the functions of how many fingers does what, that could be some features. The whole idea then of a Surface Pro. Now we have a computing device, and some of the features, the operating system there allows you to connect to a USB drive, where in a smartphone you don't. Some, just the features. I know it sounds kind of funny, but the features of what you can do. And we'll try to get we have some Surface Pros here at the college that we'll have. I'll have one or two in the class somewhere before the year's out for you to look at. Now, the categories of an operating system, we have this idea, real-time operating systems to control machinery, like in manufacturing, assembly lines, all different features in an automobile. You think about all the places we have technology controlling the new F-35 jets, fighter jets, spacecraft, all kinds of manufacturing. I mentioned that. There are specific types of operating systems that control probably an unmeasurable number of devices in the world. Different than smartphones and all that. These are controlled. It's very little interaction. It has this task to do. It needs to complete it by here. Okay, managing. You put on the brakes and it's icy, so those, the brakes in the car alternate which wheels, give a little bit, and so the car doesn't skid. Anti-lock brakes, I guess, would be an example of that. So we have that. Then we have operating systems that we have a single user, okay, or multi-user. Now, the operating systems in your tablets and smartphones and so forth, and laptops, that could vary, but a lot of those devices would be single user. There's only one person communicating with the device at any one time. Okay? Now we can also have multi-user, in which multiple people are functioning with the operating system at a particular time, like on a server. Windows and Linux and a number of operating systems allow multiple people to be operating on one computer at the same time. And then we have the idea of task. Most operating systems now allow us to multitask, but not all. Okay, but multitask means you have multiple tasks running at once. It's opening up several things on your laptop at the same time, and the operating system can manage all that in your memory and your processor of what's doing what. It can manage all that, so we can be multitasking. And some operating systems work more like a single task. And I guess if you want an analogy, maybe like the iPad. You really have one app in front of you that you're using at any one time. At least it appears that way. All right. And this can get way more complicated, but that'll be good enough for now. Let's move ahead then. Let's go down here to file management. This would be like a utility. And what we've done in class that's similar to file management is we've used that file manager in which we created folders, we've created subdirectories, directories, and we move files from one to another. Later on we'll talk about we can defrag You have to look that up in a unit later on. You take a hard drive and move all the files around. They call defragmentation. A hard drive can get fragmented. The files can get stored multiple different places. You need to rearrange it so it's more efficient. This is good for performance. And so that has to do with a hard drive and so forth. We have a task manager. That's software that you can open up and you can see for your multitask operating system, you can see which apps are running at any one time, and you can see which processes are running at any one time. And you can actually kill a process. You can say, I want this process to quit running. The typical user doesn't use the task manager a lot, but since we're moving from a typical user to a little bit more of an expert, we'll take a look at the task manager and some of the things you can do and not do. You can look at the different processes that are running. You know, a computer's running many different things at once, believe it or not. And then you can check those. You can use some website via the internet and look up and see if a process is something the computer should be running or should not be running. Also, the task manager would lead us into the part where you can update some user information. If your computer is going to be used by different people, you can create different user accounts. You can change password and how to access your computer. You can actually do quotas. You can say certain people can only store so much space on the computer and so forth. You know, you can manage a hard drive. So then when you think about all of this, these utilities here allow you to manipulate a little bit of the work that the operating system does. Some of its functions is to manage disk space. I talked about that up here. And where you can do a little work to manipulate that using task manager, file management, and so forth. So it's becoming a little more of an expert in understanding how it works, or understanding the difference in features of why you would use one operating system over another. Device drivers. Device drivers are software that allows a certain piece of hardware to communicate with your operating system. For example, let's say you wanted to add some external storage. You're going to purchase an external hard drive, and that's going to have a USB, and depending on the size and so forth, you might actually be able to power that, spin it, using power from your USB. But anyway, you're going to plug that into the computer, into your device, your laptop, or maybe your Surface or your desktop computer at home. And then the OS in here has to be able to communicate to this device. And this device could be, let's say, a Seagate hard drive or some other brand name hard drive. Well, they write some software to allow that device to connect to your computer. Not much different than using a, let's say, off the USB, you connect a printer. Well, there is software called a device driver that's going to allow you to say, let's say you get a Hewlett-Packard printer, it's going to allow that Hewlett-Packard printer to communicate to the computer. So the operating system's going to know when an app says, I'd like to print, the app sends a request to the operating system. The operating system's able to send it to this printer, even though the printer's made by Hewlett-Packard. The operating system's made by Microsoft. Your computer maybe was made by Toshiba, okay? And the processor's an Intel, and your memory's from some other, okay? So we can make different hardware devices communicate with device drivers. Antivirus software, we're able to have software work with the operating system. So let's say you plug in a flash drive And that flash drive is going to send and communicate, and you're going to load some files off the flash drive into your memory or onto your hard drive. It's able to check and see if any of those files are files that match virus software. Software we know is bad. Okay? We have images of it. They call them signatures. So we can compare it to that. So you can have some piece of software on your computer to constantly monitor the items coming in and out. And I say antivirus, but you know it could be any type of malware, spyware, you know, any kind of software that we want to monitor. Malicious software that's going to do something that isn't good to the computer. And so like viruses, you know, that's when we talk up here, the task manager, you can open that up and look at these processes, and sometimes you can look and see that there's actually a virus running on your computer, if you understand enough about it. Alright, we're going to do some, I'll do some follow-up where we actually demo some of these items on a computer so you can actually see it. And that is it right now for operating systems and system software, I should say, and all of the things that go with system software. Operating systems, utilities, device drivers, operating systems, utilities, device drivers, and antivirus software. At least the ones I like to throw into system software. If you look up on Wikipedia, operating systems, it just has a really good layout of it, of operating systems and definitions of many of the things we talked about here. Well, that's it.